Hola, mi nombre es Alex. Aquel es Steven. Y acá abajo tenemos Brian. Y esto es el
The
awkward side.
Thanks.
There you go. Cool. Oh, man. Alrighty. So right off the bat, we've been struggling with Brian's internet connection. um, let's see. Well, first let's see if we can have Brian explain the situation real quick. If not, we'll jump in.
My internet sucks.
Perfect. And that was beautiful. That was like the best so far. Like over the
That was
past
the
hour.
best quality that we got in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah. So we are having some
Yes, you can tell. You can tell that he paused. So when you guys watch this video, he paused. The video freeze. Oh my god! I'm gonna be laughing up a storm this episode.
Thanos right now was like, you should have gone for that.
If you see me turn the video off, I'll be attempting that a few times as we get through this.
Yeah. So yeah, we've been having some issues more extreme than other weeks on Brian's end, but we're gonna try to push through. Steven and I will take the lead today. Brian's gonna chime in as much as he can, and then yes, like he said, if you see the video go out, he's gonna just try to chime in audio status, and we'll just see how this works. What do you think, Steven?
Let's do it. Just a heads up, I have the gigs today, so I might be giggly.
Oh, okay. Did you have some sugar or what?
I just had a cherry Coke, and then Brian freezing every like 5 minutes is like
It added to it.
it just adds to the
Yeah, I think this is gonna be the first time that we have sugary shoulders going
to the funny.
episode. So we'll see how that goes. Brian, what's your take on all this? Oh, no.
I hate it.
Oh, there it is.
Know.
And you know what's funny?
I don't know.
Go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
we
better.
can hear you perfectly now.
All right. So you guys don't get to see my ugly dome for a while, but let's see. I'll try to turn it back on in a little bit.
Okay, dude, you're actually perfect now.
Yeah, I'm glad that you have a microphone now.
That's true. Brian just sounds like our tech guy now.
Yeah, okay.
It's the Steven and Lex podcast. It's like, hey, Brian, our tech guy, can you fact check if it fans or no fans is better? But so Steven, how's the week been? How's Brian? How's everything?
Did you ask Steven how's Brian?
Yeah. Hey, Steven, how's Brian?
Brian's having some technical difficulties at the moment.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no, he's coming in clear right now, audio wise,
Yeah,
so that's
this
good.
has been the best so far.
I mean, shit. When we do our little promo video on Instagram, I mean, it's not gonna be 3 faces, you know. It's only gonna be 2.
You're gonna have to put you're gonna have to edit a face over Brian's name right there.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to put something in the background.
It's like Bray Wyatt.
I'm gonna put the Rocky Dennis picture of him.
Oh no.
the one where he's in Solvang.
The Solvang.
Or maybe the one where he's pointing a gun at the ostrich's head.
Oh no.
that
was a bad one.
Oh, I mean, everybody.
I'm a bad guy for that one.
It's so out of context right now when people.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it's out of context. It's like I think the only reason I made it that day because it was so random. But then looking back, I'm like, oh, that's just like a jerk one.
But it's a good
I like the Rocky Dennis one. It's Solvang one. But yeah, sorry, Brian. Yeah. So what's our first topic for today, actually?
So let's jump right into it. Our first topic of the day. I gotta make sure I word this correctly. So, first of all, baseball without fans is pretty cool. I don't know if you guys have seen. They have like a filter at certain camera angles. Like there's digital fans in the stands. I don't know if you've seen that. That's pretty cool. And then the fact
isn't that NBA?
No, like the baseball, they have digital fans like in all the. It looks like a full stadium. It's very
like
CGI. Yeah, it's very CGI.
No way! I didn't see the CGI. I saw the cutouts. That's crazy.
The networks are doing it.
Nice. That's awesome.
I think the stadium.
And then, like you said, the NBA, how they have the actual like Zoom audience. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Did you see Lil Wayne in the Zoom audience?
With that, the question or
forget you, Lex.
the debate was, does the presence of fans at professional sports games affect the final score?
The final score. So it is that specific.
It's very specific. Yeah.
Hmm.
People try to strawman me, so I had to get a little more specific.
It's funny because before the episode started, I was like, well, I disagree. Well, okay. Well, we should start with your guys' stance. You guys generally agree that it does or doesn't affect the score.
The fans do not affect the final score of the game in
Mhm.
professional sports,
And
which I
Brian,
think that's what I said in the question.
Yeah, I agree. I believe that, like, although fans may play a role, and in certain circumstances they have, but I do not think they affect the final score of the game.
hmm yeah, it's crazy because I was
He's like,
under the
because you guys are
impression.
wrong.
Yeah, yeah. It sounded like I was about to just like come like real intense with an argument. No, I was about to say it's crazy because I looked at it as like the original question being, does fans or no fans affect the performance? And I would say absolutely it affects the performance, right? But I'm not sure if it affects the score in a team sport like basketball or baseball or stuff like that, right? Especially basketball when something like fighting, like UFC, I think it definitely affects it negatively, right? Or positively, but mostly negatively. So if like you're a fighter and you clock someone and the other guy gets rocked a little bit, and then because the fans are going nuts now, and you try to go in for the finish too fast, and then they finish you, and then you're knocked out and you actually lose. That's how fans could negatively affect the outcome of a UFC fight. But it looks like you guys are talking more like the team sports, right? So that's where it kind of gets like a little
Honestly,
bit.
I think all professional sports, and I would even say MMA or boxing. I mean, I think these fighters are so. I mean, the professionals, they're so focused on the fight. I think they're able to basically cut out all the outside noise and focus with the target right in front of them.
It's crazy. I still think the fans affect even in that regard, but also to the point where no fans, right, in the UFC like world of no fans, they can actually hear their coaches clear as day, like right without like 20,000 like roaring fans. Not only that, they could hear the opposing coaches, right? Not only that, supposedly a lot of the fighters were able to hear the announcers. And like we have like announcers like DC and like Dominic Cruz who are like really intelligent like fighter, like high IQ fighters. And so like I kind of really don't believe this, but like a lot of fighters have claimed like, oh, I've heard the announcers saying what she needs to do or what he needs to do is this, and then they do it. And it like basically wins them the fight, like strategy wise. I would actually say it does affect. Now it's crazy. Now I don't think it affects as much for the team sports, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, for example, where fans do come into factors like home field advantage, right? So, and let me know if I stop becoming.
You're good. You're doing so great so far.
Okay. Uh, but like for example, free throw lines at the free throw line, the crowd goes crazy. You might miss your free throw. But you could make the case that some athletes would prefer that because um, they're used to a loud crowd while they're making free throws. So like when it gets really quiet, sometimes they tend to miss their free throws too, like at home games. That stupid Seattle Seahawks thing, the 12th man crap, or how loud your stadium is because, someone might miss an audible and that might mean that affects the play. So I do believe fans play a role, but do they, when you have professional athletes on the field or the court or wherever this is, or whatever, they do not affect the final score. I do believe the professional athletes and their talent and the coaching affects the final score.
Yeah. Let me be clear with this here. The fans do affect the players' motivation. They can affect the players' emotions, whether it be long term, short term. Um, they do probably affect the the senses of a player. Obviously, like you said, the 12th man. Yeah, you might not be able to hear the audible or whatever, but I mean these are professional players who game plan for a week in advance, and so like I'm sure that they have hand signals for audibles, right? So I mean, yes, it makes it harder, but I don't think that it affects the outcome, the final score of the game, whether it be 21-14, 17-14, 35-27, whatever it is, that score isn't because the fans were too loud or the fans were non-existent.
And I always I was bringing this up yesterday while we were playing the game. Like Mariano Rivera, one of the best closers of all time. I doubt there were situations where the crowd respect him because he's the closer. He goes in there and does his job he's the best closer of all time for a reason. But I'm sure the crowds got really loud. He's been in playoff situations his whole career, and I understand a baseball crowd's a lot louder in the playoffs. But I guess the point that we're also making is um, the crowd also plays a role in affecting the game in a negative way more so than a positive way.
Mhm.
Like I guess the case study we're gonna bring up is Bartman, right?
Right.
The Chicago Cubs situation where I believe there was an opportunity to get an out and then he caught the ball. This is a long time ago, but it's
2003 postseason.
I was 13 years old when this happened. So he caught the ball. He didn't know what he was doing. The Cubs had an opportunity to get an out. I don't know if there was 2 outs or 1 out. I forgot. But apparently it made it where the Cubs couldn't close out the inning, I believe.
Let me give you the layout here. Cubs are up 3-2 in a 7-game series. It's the top of the 8th inning. The Cubs have 1 out. There's a person on second base, and they're winning the game 3-0.
Okay. This situation, also keep in mind, Bartman catches the ball, but it's not like he ran on the field and caught the ball. This was a foul.
So he didn't catch the ball. He deflected the ball, but
okay, yeah,
just for clarification.
I don't think that guy could catch a ball. So, but it was all it resulted in, right? Was a foul ball, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So
It was a foul ball. It was like landing right in front of him. So
Mhm.
he's, on the fence or on the wall. Him and like 2 other fans, they're all putting their hands out to reach for it. And it happens to hit his hands and bounces off of it. And you can see the outfielder like get angry because, the outfielder felt like they could jump up and catch it. The wall's pretty high, by the way, if you go back and watch the video. But whether the guy could have caught it or not caught it, that doesn't explain why they ended up losing 8-3 in 2 innings.
So I'm gonna throw this out there. If I was a Cubs fan in that situation, especially with the World Series drought they had, I would be absolutely pissed. I'd be
Mhm.
frustrated, and I would place blame on Bartman.
Right.
That being said, that being said, going back to our objective debate, I guess we're trying to have here, the Cubs still had an opportunity to close out that inning. Had home field advantage. The crowd was on their side in that situation. And even though that play might have emotionally affected Moises Alou, I think he was the one who was trying to catch
Correct.
the ball.
Moises Alou,
They still had an opportunity to close out the inning. They still had an opportunity in Game 7.
correct.
They
Which
still
was the
had-
following day.
So they had plenty of opportunities to close out that series. And as professional athletes, they let themselves down. But I get it. I get the situation where you had an out and it didn't happen.
And I think they end up
outs in the playoffs are hard to get.
Yeah, I think they end up winning the World Series 3 years later. Or not 3 years
The
later.
Cubs?
What is it? 7 years later in
Mhm.
2016. Correct? Was it 16?
2000
The Cubs.
Was it 16 or 15?
Let me
The
see.
Cubs won it.
It
year before
was
the Astros.
2016.
16.
4-3
right, okay.
over Cleveland Indians.
And guess who got a World Series ring?
Who?
But
Steve Bartman.
Did he really?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
did. So,
That's hilarious.
again, everybody has their opinion, but your opinion's wrong if you don't if you don't agree with us.
So do they play a role? I think saying yes, right? Play a role
Yes.
in the game.
Yes, I agree
But,
with that.
But it's also like one of those things where coaches say like, well, you lost by 1 point, and if you made that one free on third quarter, you guys would have had a tie game. Sports doesn't work that way, So like, you can't look back on one specific possession and say that's where we lost the game.
Well, here's a question for you guys. What affects the outcome of the game more. The Steve Bartman interference, where I looked back at the video right now, and yeah, the guy clearly had a really good chance at catching. But yeah, like Steven said, who knows if he would have? But he had a really good, like he had the height on the jump, and
Mhm.
does that affect the score more, or does bad officiating affect it, like the Saints and the Rams that one year, right? So
Oh,
like,
bad officiating.
Definitely bad
you think that affects
officiating.
more?
Yeah.
A bad call has a lot more of an effect on the actual final score of the game than the fans cheering in the outfield. A lot
Yeah.
of this debate was that because this was an offsite debate that I'm bringing here to the awkward side hug. A lot of the other side of the debate was, like the fans would be cheering really loud right now, or the players would get really hyped up and start playing even better. Like there was like this, you're on fire button that they just start, going ape shit. But if a player's playing really good, without the fans, he still has his teammates there to hype him up. Like I don't see how like you wouldn't just be more confident in yourself in general if you're doing really well. If you're on the mound and you're throwing, strike after strike, getting people out, why you wouldn't, already be self-motivated and continue that trend? Like how you would all of a sudden turn it around and start pitching bad.
Yeah, it's crazy because like I've argued for your guys' side like multiple times, right? For example, like that Saints and Rams game, we had like the argument of the decade while we were at the Royal Rumble like 3 hours early, and then
Yeah.
like the Jesse thing or whatever. Like it was like it was very like similar on my position where I was probably um wrong in that sense just because it was a little different, but. It's weird in this sense. I don't want to be like, oh, the Cubs lost because of Steve Bartman, because they didn't. But it's like, I don't know, man, because like my argument for the Saints Rams thing, right, was that okay, yeah, that's horrible. They probably did get that wrong, but Drew Brees still had a chance for the rest of the game and in overtime to try to win the game, right? But he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But you guys are saying, like,
They
lost
did.
some
You're talking about the Rams, right?
yeah.
The
But
Rams
you
had.
so you guys are saying like he lost they basically lost the momentum because of the bad officiating, right? Would you say the Cubs up
what-
3-0 lost their momentum because of the Bartman?
No, because they had an opportunity the next day to play another game. So I would say this is my thing about football. Oh, well, they're the same. Basketball and like soccer, like when you talk about momentum, like basketball and soccer is a continuous sport. You're going back and forth until there's a foul or somebody scores. With football and baseball, you're stopping every play. You're stopping every pitch or every play that happens. And football, you're stopping, every possession or every down, right? So the thing with the football game was, I believe it was Jared Goff. I forgot who he threw the ball to. Tavon Austin? No, I don't know.
No, it was like Woods, I
Are we
think.
talking about the PI
The-
call?
Yeah.
PI, yeah, the PI.
Okay, the PI call, Drew Brees was throwing it to, I believe, Michael Thomas, and Ronnie Coleman got the PI.
Oh,
Oh.
okay. But he basically tackled him, right?
Might
And that
not
would
be
have got him
Michael
to like
Thomas.
10 yards or 5 yards. It wasn't a touchdown, but it
Right.
would have got him to like 5 yards away.
Right.
When they kept the possession going, they would have probably kicked the field goal and won the game.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah,
Correct, yeah. Because they would have been in field goal position. Who's to say, though, that the guy wouldn't have missed the field goal?
That's
Right.
true too.
So,
Yeah.
you still have a field goal to kick. Yeah, they would have been put into field goal range and had a more percentage chance of winning the game. But nobody can say without a shadow of a doubt, unless you're God himself, that the kicker would have 100% made that field goal.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's more likely, but you're right.
Mhm.
It's not 100%.
And then I'll throw this out there. When you look back at the film, how many opportunities were left out on the field defensively and offensively to score a field goal, or to get in range or score a touchdown, make a stop on a third down. Yes, that play did have a huge effect on where the following down would have been, or who would have had possession. But I don't think overall, I'm still going to stick to my guns here, and I don't think overall that one play ended the Saints' season. And I think this is the argument that I had last time. It did cut the momentum, No, what I said last time was it did cut the momentum,
Mhm.
but the final score isn't determined by that one play.
Mm-hmm.
But yes,
So-
bad officiating. Sorry, Brian, to cut you off. Bad
Mhm.
officiating is more of an effect on a game than the
The bar,
fans
like
being at the game.
especially the specific barment.
Well,
Right.
let
Yeah.
me put this in perspective, though. Bartman was an opportunity for the Cubs to have. Because keep in mind, it was the 8th inning too, right? Is that what you're saying? It wasn't even
Yes,
the ninth
correct.
inning. It
Uh-huh.
wasn't
Top
like,
of the 8th
It
inning.
wasn't like that. They were 2 outs away. They were at least 5 outs away.
Right.
The difference between both scenarios, though, is in that moment in the Saints game, their season was kind of on the line.
Right.
Whereas the Cubs' season wasn't on the line in this situation. They just crumbled underneath the situation.
Hmm.
But if the Bartman thing happened in Game 7, bottom of the 9th inning or top of the 9th inning, I would make the case that, like, yeah, maybe the Bartman situation is on the same level as, like, the PI situation in the Rams game.
Okay, so were they up 3-2 and not 3-2? They were up 3-0 in the game, right?
Correct.
And then what game number in the series was it?
This was game 6.
6.
Yeah.
And who
So
was
if they would have won that game, they would have gone on
to the next round, right?
to the next round. Correct.
I don't know, man. I lean towards the specific Bartman situation. Maybe it could have had some momentum change.
No, definitely it had momentum change. I would totally
Yeah.
agree with you on that. But they were up 3-0. How do you end up losing the game 8-3?
Because who knows? Like, it's hard because, right? Because like we have like the numbers in the stat sheet, but obviously I can't remember who was up to bat or like if whoever scored like or started that rally of the 8 runs, if they would have had a gone up in the 9th instead of the 8th, or you know what I mean, stuff like that. Like I don't remember what the situation was at all, but
I like I say, I do think it played a role. And both situations played a role in the comparison we're making. But I don't think they affected necessarily the overall outcome of the game. But, like, you know how, like, when you go on your ESPN app, there's percentages that say, like, 89% chance of winning based
Mhm.
on the current situation. I do
Mhm.
believe the Cubs' percentage at that point got a little lower. And when the Saints got the PI call, didn't get the PI call, the percentage got a little lower.
Mhm.
I do believe, like I said, these situations do play a role, but I don't think they affect the overall final score. Whereas, because you're comparing bad officiating, as a coach, I used to always say, like, well, our team should not put the refs in a situation where they're affecting the game based on the call. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you're in situations where it just gets to that point where, like, sometimes you even tell your players drive to the basket and put the situation in the ref's hands. Like, that's sometimes a call you make as a coach. So I do think officiating plays more of a role than the fans necessarily, but, like, there is situations where, like, the Bartman situation, yeah, the Cubs couldn't probably close the
No.
series out, but
Yes.
I stopped talking. I already saw myself. Like,
nice.
glitching on the glitch. But, like,
Brian's ahead of the glitch in
As
the Matrix.
this
I
is
do think I'll admit, I do believe we're talking on a fine line here, because we could talk alternative universes and stuff like that. But if the Cubs did get that second out, and then the next person up got the third out, because having 1 out or 2 outs or whatever, but when the final score is 8-3, when you're up 3-0, like, even if the guy on second scored, you know what I mean? Like, you still have an opportunity to still win that game, and I do believe, as professional athletes, you have to close that out. My stance has always been, though, like, for the Cubs, like the Cubs fans in that situation, or the Saints fans in this situation with the Rams, like, I'm glad I'm on the other end of it because we got the win. But, like, I think why fans have excuses like that is, like, let them have their excuses while we have the win, you know?
Mhm.
And so, like, I do feel like both are, how should I say, good excuses for those fans to have.
yeah.
But for the rest of the league, objectively, I don't think it had anything to do with the score.
It'd be interesting to talk to like the players to see if they themselves think that one play caused them to lose.
Man, you're just talking to Moises, always pissing on his hands.
God. Yeah, that was the wildest story ever. He used to piss on his hands for like back grip or something like what? But yeah, that's wild.
On a side note, how do you guys feel about being Rams fans, and so being on the other side of that play or that no call?
It's so crazy, man,
I,
because I'm thinking back to our great debate, right?
Right? Can you just
I glitched in
clarify
real
what?
life right now.
Yeah. Can you clarify what the debate
As like
was?
the
That way we
summary,
can all
right?
agree. Yeah, as we
It's
can
so
all
weird
agree
because
to it.
it's so weird because I'm almost gonna kind of like oppose like, but anyways, the general summary. It was like the Rams, Saints,
Right.
the missed PI call.
Right.
I was arguing that like I mean yeah, it was probably a PI from what I remember, but they didn't call it. They missed it. Um, Now here's the thing. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I
No,
feel
go ahead.
like
Yeah, go ahead.
your side was more for um the Saints lost because of the missed PI, and I was like, I mean, it shifted the momentum, sure,
Hmm.
but Drew Brees and the Saints had every opportunity afterwards to win it. Whereas you just brought up that like I didn't even bring up
I
the
think that was the
beforehand.
last possession because then the Rams got it, and I think the time ran out.
Hmm. No, they went into overtime from what I remember. I
right.
think,
Oh, they
right?
did.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And did they
so
each get
since
one
the
possession in
PI
overtime?
called the, I believe so. And
Yeah,
then
because I
after Drew
think that's
Brees
what I
threw the
was
pick
arguing, but like I said, it was.
to my boy
Oh,
John
sorry, go
Johnson,
ahead.
the third. Sorry, I
Okay, no,
got
you're good.
excited.
You're good.
uh, well, let me put this in perspective, and I think based on like
I think you need to
uh,
take a seat real quick and let your computer catch up to you.
oh, did it not?
Just
Is
for
it
just
not good
yeah,
now?
just for a
It
second. No,
was
you
just
just
like a
yeah.
split second delay, but it
Uh,
was like every other second.
Because
okay, because I was just
Lex
gonna.
is for the most part correct.
Yeah,
So
because
I'm
I think
gonna.
I think that was the gist of it, right? So it was like
Yeah.
Steven.
It was basically saying momentum. Momentum was
Mhm.
lost. We were discussing momentum, and if
That would be the
momentum,
common ground, I think, though, right? Is that we both at least agreed that
right?
momentum was definitely lost on the Saints end because of it.
Which I argued that most likely the Saints would have won that game because the
Mhm.
kicker would have had the opportunity to kick the field goal.
Mhm.
But
I
again,
would probably agree with that too.
at the end of the day, like, and I think you told me like the kicker might have missed the field goal. Like, so we can't really sit on that.
My
Yeah,
take,
yeah.
my takes, and this is gonna is it more so saved the Rams season than it lost the Saints the game.
Mm-hmm.
The Rams had a very little chance of winning that game if that field goal kicker was on that field.
Oh yeah, yeah,
He's not.
for sure, for sure.
He's not a scab either. He's a pretty good field goal kicker.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so it was gonna save the Rams game, save the Rams season more so than it lost because the Saints still had an opportunity in overtime to win the game.
And I think that was
Uh,
more what I was like arguing for is
uh,
is that the momentum was lost, but Drew Brees and the Saints still had that one final shot to like ball don't lie type of thing,
Mhm.
which is kind of a bad, I guess, phrase to put in here because the PI was like pretty bad, the missed PI, but
well, the Rams got they missed the playoffs the next season, so we'll see what
exactly, yeah,
happens.
exactly.
I'm
I'm
not
not
gonna
gonna lie
lie.
to you.
But ball
Um,
didn't lie in the long run. Go ahead, sorry.
I'm not gonna lie, but like that game came on before the Chiefs and the Patriots, so my mind wasn't really on the game, or I
Oh.
can't really recall a lot of it because I was so focused on the other game.
And no, that
Well,
absolutely has a lot to, yeah, that definitely has an effect because yeah, like you said, you're ahead of somewhere else at the moment.
well, like
Um,
if you think about it too, like I remember I was talking to Steven in this off season, I believe, or maybe I brought it up to you too. But this season in the NFL, they're allowing 7 teams to make the playoffs. They're not. It's not 6 anymore. And the Rams came in 7th place last year. And I was like, well, if this rule was happening last season, the Rams would have made it. And it seems like, well, it wasn't. So,
at the end of the day, yeah, yeah,
and I was thinking about like, well, the Rams were probably one. I think they lost it by like 1 game,
yeah.
where they were like 1 or 2 games behind somebody. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
and you start looking back in the season, start looking at what games should we have won. Like, obviously, we were going to lose the Ravens and all these things, but we should have beat the Seahawks the first time around. But Greg the Leg, who for being almost perfect his entire career, I feel like dropped the ball in that game. And you start looking back on the games, like why did we lose to the Bucks and stuff like that. And
I was gonna say the Bucks, they tore you guys up.
so like I think like at the end of the day, like when we're like discussing these things, like in terms of certain fan bases, it's easy to look at certain situations and be like, well, is this a reason why things happen and not happen? But the way objectively looking at the entire season, like everyone who made the playoffs deserved to make the playoffs. And uh yeah, that was a bad call on the refs, but you know what? The Saints had an opportunity to make the playoffs this year and then they dropped the ball again. You know, it's as professional athletes, like sometimes you just gotta own up to your situation. As fans, you gotta own up that things just didn't go your way. But when you're passionately watching or you're passionately doing stuff, it's hard to do. I gotta admit that.
No, yeah, it's crazy. But yeah.
So at the end of the day, we agree to disagree, right?
Yeah. And it's
Somewhat.
funny because I'm not even going like too far into the department and the score thing. I just think fans absolutely affect at least the players' momentum, right? And I think it can affect the score, and I absolutely do think that it has before. I don't think it affects the score every single game at all. That would be pretty. That will, yeah. I definitely don't think that. I do think it affects way more MMA fights though.
Another just a quick thing that I want to make the two games we're talking about, the Saints and the Rams and the Cubs game, those were playoff games that were nationally watched too. Whereas like I feel like on average, if those situations might have happened in the regular season, they would be like on ESPN on like a Monday morning quarterback situation. But I doubt we would be in here and being like, well, fans this or officiating that. I think it's because since those games basically affected maybe how teams' seasons ended, I think that's why those situations come up fresh in our brains. Where like fans affected a game or the refs affect the game.
It's funny because whereas like how Steven did bring up a good point of like there was probably times earlier in the game, like the Rams Saints game, that the Saints probably could have capitalized, but they didn't. And that would probably favor like my argument like 3 years ago. But it's weird because I'll probably even sway it into Steven's argument, and that I think that call, and this will probably agree with what you guys said about the officiating. I think that call definitely affected that game more than no, never mind. I would say both have some sort of momentum, but the call probably affected the game a little bit more than the Steve Bartman thing. Not a little bit more. Definitely did affect it more.
I'd agree with you on that.
Yeah. But yeah, sports. Sometimes talk about sports too much doesn't allow us time to communicate with women and find relationships. But somehow we have them, and relationships are a thing. A lot of our viewers have relationships.
Transitioning maybe to two topics actually. Very interesting thing happened. Very interesting thing happened recently is, so I started dating my girlfriend last year, where the Clippers were in the playoffs, but they were the eighth seed. They're playing the Golden State Warriors. I didn't really feel like I had to like say like, hey, like I need to watch these games. Like I made sure I watched them, but I didn't like sit down and go, hey, I need to watch these games.
Yeah.
But this time around, the Clippers have a decent chance, I feel like. So I actually this is the first time in the relationship where I actually had to say like, hey, Monday night I need to watch the game. Wednesday night I need to watch the game. Friday night I need to watch the game. And then she was bringing up like, oh, well, the Padres are playing or something. And I was like, nope, I'm going to cash in my sports television time for those games specifically. This is going to be the first time she's going to see me get extremely sad. Because this is going to be like anything that's happened in the Clippers past.
Yeah, I've been there. And it's funny because, the Clippers are, a powerhouse team, favored for this season. And it hasn't always been the case, right? The Clippers were definitely this is new territory for the Clippers. And as good as the Blake Griffin, Chris Paul, DeAndre Jordan team were, they had their bad luck as far as the first and second rounds a lot, right? Even though they made the playoffs those years. So I've been right next to Brian, and I can honestly vouch and agree with that and say that I've never seen Brian more sad or affected then anything like not non-serious issue like family or like friends or whatever. Man,
No,
the
probably most of the
Clippers.
Clippers thing. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Which-
Clippers is like the
Do
number one thing that's ever
do you-
affected them that bad.
do you think that this year will affect you more because they have an even better chance than they did with the Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan team? All right.
No, I'm trying to think because, like, to be honest with you, I do feel like this is our best chance. So I can't say that yet because I haven't gotten depressed yet. But there was moments where I was watching the Chris Paul Blake Griffin thing, and I was like, our chances are getting numbered. These players are gonna leave, and we're not getting it done. So I felt the pressure of us having to win because eventually Chris Paul's contract's gonna run out, Blake Griffin's contract's gonna run out. Whereas since Kawhi and Paul George are still freshly signed, I do believe, like, I'm not feeling that pressure, but I do believe, like, this is our best chance, especially with our role players. You know, this is a Montrezl Harrell contract year too. You know, like, our players that kind of built the foundation for this team to be good with the two players, that's going to run out now because we've been having this role playing team for the last 3 years. I do feel some of the pressure, but not. I bet you when the Clippers blew a 3-2 lead against the Houston Rockets, up 20 points in the third quarter, that's probably the most depressed. Because when they lost Game 6, I knew we lost the series. It wasn't even Game 7. I was like, we lost Game 6. I was like, this is it.
Oh.
James Harden's fat ass playing defense was.
Oh, that's beautiful. And it's sort of that
Which,
like you said, you don't have all the pressure for the specific team because of those. It's the first year of these contracts, but it's sort of like the measuring stick season, right? Like, for example, like with the Lakers and LeBron James, like that first year was like, oof, you know, like Lakers are responsible for LeBron James's first missed playoff in forever, right? And now like the second year is like, okay, we got AD, freaking number one in the West, but then it's like, man, Lillard and like the bubble and like, you know, Lakers probably. I don't want to sound like Colin Cowherd right now, but the Lakers probably do have like the toughest road of it, and like the toughest road to the championship.
if Russell Westbrook comes back by round 2, yeah, I totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
If it's just
So that would be
James
like the
Harden
break
adds,
if he doesn't, right?
yeah, like if
Yeah.
if it's just James Harden Rockets, then I think you guys will still comfortably win.
Yeah, because because Lillard and the Blaze, like just yeah, that's pretty scary to think about, right? Yeah, so like if Westbrook comes back round 2, Clippers, you know what I mean? That like the Clippers are designed to beat the Lakers, and then freaking whoever makes it from the East.
Most likely the Bucks.
Yeah, so it's a scary one for sure, but
Which I was gonna say, so I guess segueing was like, is sports something I had to align with my significant other? And it is something, but I say it wouldn't be top 3.
So one question that Steven brought up that was really good is what are like the 3 things that you sort of have to align with a partner in a relationship, right? To be a successful relationship. Is that how you would pose the question, Steven?
Yeah, that was beautifully spoken. Beautifully spoken. Real quick before we jump into this, I'm gonna sound like a bad guy, and a lot of people are gonna hate me, but I am just crossing my fingers that the Lakers lose. It doesn't have to be in the first round, but I just
At some point.
There's just something about you Laker fans that just I don't know what it is, but yeah. Anyway, so back to relationships. If I had to choose between, like, because I'm not a fan of any LA team in basketball, but if I had to choose between the 2 LA teams, it would definitely be the Clippers. So I don't know why I have this stank eye for the Lakers.
I believe that's how you chose your team, actually, right? Because of your hatred for the Lakers.
I actually enjoyed the Lakers in the early 2000s.
Oh, that's right.
For that three-peat, but after that three-peat, like I just
yeah,
I don't know.
Oh, never mind. You said okay. I remember the Celtics came a lot earlier than the actual meeting of the Lakers and Celtics.
Hopefully we don't go too much on a tangent, but I was an Angels fan until they won the World Series, and then I got really bored of the team, and
Mm-hmm.
realized they weren't maybe. This might come off as the wrong words, but like culturally, like what I would imagine a team I would root for. Right, I just felt like a stadium surrounded by industrial buildings and stuff like that was
Yeah.
just not something that felt like
Yeah.
a team I wanted to root for.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to root for the same team that has a stadium that hosts the Harvest Festival every year.
You wilding right now.
Is that a similar thing that happened to you, Steven, where you kind of just got like, what is there to root for or something after the Lakers won their three-peat, or
Yeah,
is it a totally different thing?
I don't know. Maybe it could have been the whole like Kobe and Michael Jordan comparison. You know, I mean, growing up, always being in basketball since I was like 3. In the 90s, I was a huge, Chicago Bulls, Michael Jordan, more so Michael Jordan fan than anything, especially, in the last 3P, the 96, 97, 98 years. So like, I didn't get bored of the Bulls. The Lakers, I don't know, man. I just got tired of them. Like, cause I guess I'm not one for the big, like, oh, they're unstoppable. Like, I hate when people say like, oh, this team's like unstoppable. Like nobody's like the Patriots, It was cool the first couple of years that they won some Super Bowls, but like these last couple of years, it just like you get tired of them. It's like, and I guess it's the fan culture too. Like, oh, we're the shit. Like we're the Patriots, or we're the Lakers, and so
It's funny because I wouldn't say, and it's
I
not
didn't
like
mix into the fan culture basically.
nice. Yeah, it's not like the Dodgers are like have been winning World Series like left and right? Like we've been making it, but just missing, and then the Astro situation that didn't help things. But okay, so I wouldn't say ironic, like as funny as this would sound. I would actually say I'm a unique Dodger fan, right? So Dodgers in baseball, that's like my favorite sport, favorite team over all of them. But I'm not your stereotypical Dodgers fan. But I think recently I'm becoming a stereotypical Lakers fan because I've been getting pretty unbearable, especially with the Jesse argument of 2020. But
I if I could chime in, I think like if you understand, like there's a thing like where you can have a personal relationship with your teams and stuff like that, and you could have your own stance and stuff like that. But if you know you're part of a culture full of douche nozzles, like I agree, like USC fans are the most douche nozzle fandom, and especially in Southern California, right? In terms of like college football, and we're not even that good anymore. But like USC football fans are total dicks. And I understand that if I affiliate myself with those guys, I might come off as a total dick just for enjoying the team. So I do feel like that's maybe where Steven's trying to get at a little bit, is just like it might not necessarily be people individually, but I think the culture overall, people tend to not like them. And I think maybe that's where you're getting at with your Jesse argument a little bit too. Like you're just like, I'm not a fan of the Clippers fan culture either. And that's
it's weird because I'm really not like a stereotypical Lakers fan either. It's just I know like a lot of the points that Lakers fans like really get hit for, and I started seeing this like sort of like I don't really want to call it hipster like rising of Clipper fans, but a lot of like it's a very like hidden thing that a lot of Clippers fans agreed on, and like I felt like it was like an excuse that they would always keep bringing up, and it was just like this one little thing, right? That only I was like, hey, like I was like the Lakers are just like on the pedestal of like, hey, you guys are d-bags, right? But like I'm kind of like, all right, I try not to be a Laker d-bag. I don't think I am, but I was kind of looking down at like the hipster common ground that a lot of Clippers fans always mentioned. And it's funny because even right before I brought it up, I was even like, like I know like I'm fighting a losing battle here, but and then I just kind of brought it up, and he kept attacking like the point of like, oh, like it's valid, and I'm just like, yeah, and then I got triggered because he laughed.
I'm gonna throw this out there, and Jesse can say what he wants. Jesse is a hipster Clippers fan. So. Yeah, I think he started rooting for them within this last decade. Whereas, like, there's nothing wrong with
There's
picking
nothing wrong
up
with
a
it.
new
Yeah.
team.
You're right.
It's just like there's a difference between I think Clipper fans who watch a decade of losing and an hour and a decade of somewhat winning.
You're right, because like
And
let's
I
say
do
like if you brought like the Padres aspect, like let's just say for some reason I'm just like, oh, but the Padres fans are always doing this, and you could probably be like, yeah, I could see that. Whereas I
yeah.
think Jesse was going 110% for like a little part of it, And I'm being like, and it's funny because I'm being like real like ambiguous about it because it really was just like a small little like thing that I don't even remember the full details of it, but we just kind of like butted heads just because our personalities clashed that night. But
Mhm.
speaking of clashing though, back to the relationship stuff. So like sort of like three things that kind of have to be aligned to have a successful to have sex.
Have sex.
What are three things that need to be aligned to have sex? To have a successful relationship. What are
Well,
what are things that you guys came up with
I
that you feel
so
like you can't really go without in order to have that success?
Before we get into that, what do you consider a successful relationship?
hmm So that's a hard one, right? Because
Do you
when
consider
when
marriage being successful, or
yeah, yeah, I think marriage is a successful one. Man, I'm not going to be able to say that for the rest of the podcast. Um, I think I think just going the distance till the end of life, even if you're not married but you're in a relationship. But I mean by that time, most of the people are married. Just making it to the end, the finish line, I would say is an accomplished one. Um, yeah, I mean, and like not like no relationship is perfect either. You know what I mean? Like all
right?
relationships are going to have their
well,
arguments and disagreements and stuff, right? And which
I
is why
think
we.
the sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead. My
I know.
bad.
Dude, you stopped for that. That's like
It's hilarious 'cause I came to a dead stop, so it looked like I was probably pissed, but I was trying to figure out. I was like, "Oh crap, was this like a lag from before?" But no, you're good. You're good. Go ahead.
let me I think maybe the way I read the question
Mhm.
is there would probably be a difference between 10 years into your marriage and then what you consider a successful relationship. Successful relationship to me is what is it that you find in somebody and what's working for you to eventually propose, get married, start a family.
Mhm.
And then later down the line we would probably ask, all right, what are the three pillars for a successful marriage? Like I do think the relationship and marriage aspect are maybe different,
Mhm.
unless
So we're
that's
thinking
not
maybe
what
like
Steven
dating
means.
to serious relationship range,
I would
I'm
say
thinking
like it's
dating
all
to early marriage.
early marriage. Okay, that works. Yeah.
to me. It's all the same.
Yeah.
To
So
be
so what
honest,
what would you guys say? Or
So do
sure.
you guys want to go? I feel like we're all in three different stages of
Yeah.
so we can all
like
talk
our relationship.
differently.
Yeah. Of course.
hmm So I say we start with the marriage dude.
The
Uh,
marriage dude. The
the
MD.
the the married guy always has to go first. Um, but
So
obviously, like I said, for me, like a successful relationship is basically leading up to a successful marriage. Because if you can't have a successful relationship, you're not going to transition into a successful marriage. So, some of the pillars to me, or at least in my opinion, are the top three pillars for a successful relationship and even a
before you get
successful
started, sorry, I was gonna
marriage.
say there might be more pillars, but we're just listing our top three, right?
I'm giving the top three. Yeah, there's obviously a lot more to be done in a relationship, but these are the top three that if you can nail these three down, like you're gonna be headed in the right path. Obviously, there's other work to be done, but relationships aren't like a one day thing. Obviously, it's a lifetime thing sometimes. So obviously, there's always ground to work on.
A
But
lifetime nightstand.
a lifetime nightstand. So so I think the first
That was
the
like a stepdad
first
joke.
the first and most important on my list is money and finances. I think that's very important too, and this doesn't have to be discussed early in a relationship, but it is something that if you're looking to take your relationship to the marriage level, or you've been talking about taking the next step into spending a lifetime together, um, money and finances is a very very big thing. I feel like there's a lot of people who really don't have that area in check. And like, I mean, even myself, when I first got married, I didn't have it in check. I mean, my wife and I had separate bank accounts. She didn't really know how much I made, until we, finally put our stuff together, and my first paycheck, got direct deposited into the joint account, and she realized, oh my God, you make this much? I never knew that. And so, definitely that's a big thing, because, you're going to have to pay bills for the rest of your life. So,
Mhm.
having your money in order is a very big thing, especially, when you have kids and things like that. To me, the second thing is family. So, um, if you're not compatible with your partner's family, then definitely you're not going to be in it for the long run, because if you can't handle the mother-in-law, the father-in-law, the brothers, the sisters, the cousins, it's just going to make for a not so fun Thanksgiving dinner. So, um, that's my second pillar. And then the third pillar is your spiritual beliefs, your religion. I'm not saying that people with different religions can't be together in a successful relationships, but I think the percentage of that is a lot lower than if you guys were either the same religion or you guys agreed on most things about your spirituality. So those are my three pillars.
Let me ask,
Yeah,
let
go
me
ahead.
ask you. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
those are your three pillars. Is
Right.
it because you're using your relationship as an example of that, or is those things that you individually think makes a successful relationship?
A little bit of both. Um, I mean, if you look up divorce, like why people get divorced, it's usually either money or family that cause
Mm-hmm.
divorces. Those are like the top two reasons. So, and then by experience, like, I mean, money's a big thing. And then family has, I mean, my father-in-law is Lex's neighbor. So, I mean, uh,
Mm-hmm.
it was,
The fourth pillar is Lex.
The
it was
fourth
a,
pillar.
it was a rags to riches story. So, once I got these three areas of my relationship, in check and in tune, I mean, I've had a pretty, um, I feel like a very successful and happy marriage so far. I mean, obviously, I got, hopefully, crossing my fingers, I have years and years to go. But as far as my last 2.5 years, I mean, the first 6 months was basically me getting these areas in check. And since then, I can't say that I've ever looked back. It's always
Hmm.
been growing together, having common goals. Like, it's just been a very positive team effort and experience.
Hmm.
And then becoming a dad was a whole nother level, but I mean, we won't get into that, right?
Another
Who do you think
topic for another episode.
Who do
Yeah.
you think should go next, Steven? I'll let you choose.
I think since we're going from marriage to the next most serious, I feel
Okay.
like Brian's a little bit further in his relationship at the moment.
All right. So first one I have is, I guess it would be timing. Being at a similar time in each other's life, like, uh, not going too deep into my past, but I feel like I've dated people that were on a different level in terms of maturity, and in some cases I was the less mature one, and in some cases I was the most mature one, and I think finding someone that is maybe on the same maturity level, same education, someone in the same point in their life, knowing the same value of a dollar, like how financially you're saying money is important. Uh, I think timing is very important. Finding someone on the same level of growth as you. Uh, and then I would say number two would be finding somebody that has the same political slash social beliefs. They don't have to be totally in sync, but they have to be somewhere within the same spectrum. I think it would be very difficult at times to, and this is just personally, I feel like when something happens in the news and you kind of agree that it's not good or something like that, I think it kind of creates like a united front in terms of your own relationship. And I think that standard would be number three for me, which is interesting because I thought you would have this one, but I have it is kids. And it's uh, having an idea if you want kids or don't want kids, because I do believe, like, I've been in situations in the past where someone would say I don't want kids, and then I would make this make believe fake ass thing in my head, like, well, yeah, I guess I don't want kids either. But truth is, I did. And if it got more serious, it probably would be a real issue. And using my own relationship as an example, we discussed that very early on, what that means to each other, and and I think like all the other stuffs ahead of it is preparing so we could eventually do have kids and be on the same page when we have kids, because at that point you're not just influencing each other, you're influencing the next generation of people. And so those were my 3 pillars.
Funny you say that. Number 4 was kids for me, so it didn't make
And
the
number
top
4
3.
and number 4 for me was money. So all right, Lex.
Yeah.
We're all just staring at Lex, huh?
No, yeah, it was hard for me to come up with like a 3 solid type of thing. So like if I had to just like start opening up on like just like one aspect is we'll just say I've kind of gone like back and forth in my head on like which one to pick, but I'll just pick one of wanting to like actually enjoying being around the person, right? So you have to, and this could be from the standpoint of at the beginning of like the dating phase, even, right? When you first start dating, you have to actually enjoy being around them, right? You're just not like you're not just trying to, you know, impress them just to get a second date or whatever, like whether it's like the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth, sixth, seventh date, whatever. You have to really know if you like being around them, and you know it'll be obvious if they like being around you, right? So it could we could call that compatibility, or we could call that just like, you know, enjoying the person's company. So I feel like that's really important, because not only in the dating phase, but when things might get boring later, right? Later on in life, whether it's a serious relationship or even a marriage, or if things start to become like routine more than anything, that could potentially not last if you don't enjoy the other person's company at the very least, right? So you have to be able to, you know, maybe enjoy going on hikes with the person, but also both people have to enjoy, you know, just sitting in and watching The Office for the second time, right? So I feel like enjoying the other person's company. My number 2 is family and friends, right? So I put family/friends, because everyone's different, whether they value family first then friends, or whether, you know, I know people who are straight up like, hey, my friends really are that family slot, you know what I mean? Family is just kind of um like a non-factor. um but yeah, so like I think like whether they could get along with your family, whether you could get along with their family, and I think friends is a big one too, to be honest. So as long as there's, you know, as long as that end is, you know, okay and friendly, then I think that's a huge one. The third one, and I would say this is probably a big one, is compromising. So um when we brought up this topic of alignment, like what are the 3 things that you and a partner have to be aligned with to have a successful relationship, I was like, you know what, I thought of that as more of what 3 things can you guys compromise about to have a successful relationship. I was about to say a success. Dude, I keep saying
You're just
sex, man.
having sexual relationships.
All right, number
only.
4, sex.
Oh my God.
That's the 4th most important. But no, yeah, I think the ability to compromise, the ability to survive these arguments, because no relationship's perfect, you know what I mean? Sometimes, you know, we've all had those relationships where it's like, man, we can't miss in these relationships, right? And I've had those relationships in the past, right? Like some of my worst relationships started out like that, like, oh my gosh, I can't find a negative thing about you, and then they end up being the worst one. But all relationships eventually get to that point where it's like, okay, well, there's stuff that we do disagree on, or there's stuff that I don't prefer they do or about them or about their belief on this certain thing. But sometimes you have to compromise on things. I think that's probably one of the most important things, is that the ability to compromise on certain issues, whether it's as small as like the toothpaste example, or as big as like I don't know, maybe even a political view, or like a social justice view. Because we're all going to have those arguments, but if you could kind of survive those, or survive and advance these arguments, and you could still joke like 5 minutes after a debate or an argument, even if it's a heated one, then I think that kind of ties like my first and third in together, that you at least enjoy being with the person, you can survive these arguments, you can compromise, and you can come to agreements, and these arguments will not brew or explode later in the relationship. And I think that's probably one of the biggest ones, because again, like me referencing my past as well, there's been plenty of times where I've held a lot of like stuff, like just like um whether it's like a jealous thing, or whether it's just like an argument where it's like, man, like we argued about this before but it wasn't settled, and now like hey, like you said like this, but you're out here doing this, like that's kind of hypocritical. When you could compromise and just like survive these arguments, like these things don't grow in the future. And so yeah, I think kind of compromising is probably one of the biggest ones, because you could kind of settle these arguments, or at least realize that the argument's pretty dumb to begin with, or not as important.
I think like adding to your point is and I think like figuring out these 3 pillars in your relationship is simply just communication. Is being able to communicate with your partner about anything, almost. Kind of like them being an attachment of yourself. If you don't feel like they're an attachment of yourself in a way, or they don't know you better than you know yourself in a way, then I don't know if people are communicating with their partner correctly.
Yeah, I'll say this, and again, disclaimer. Obviously, there's more than just 3 areas of a successful relationship, but we're just going off our top 3 based on experiences and, our personal opinions. But just to kind of chime in, because obviously, like, I'm married, I have a kid. I would say that in the beginning stages, or even in the middle and towards you becoming, or you guys getting to that step where marriage is something to talk about, I think compromise has to evolve into being on the same page. Because when you're married, if all you do is compromise, it's not going to be too fun if you're always having to compromise. So I agree with you, compromise in the beginning, but as you evolve, and especially when you have a kid, you can't compromise on how you're going to raise your child. You guys have to be on the same page. Like, either they're going to believe in something, like they're going to be raised a certain religion, or you're going to want them to have certain views or certain things. Like, you can't compromise on that stuff. You have to actually be on the same page. But I believe you're right. Like, compromise in the beginning will definitely lead you towards, if you guys are, which was another one of your points, compatible. Definitely agree with that.
When you said raised a certain relation, I thought you were about to say whether they're going to be racist or.
I would hope that you don't raise your child to be racist.
Right. Yeah.
And this is going to sound bad, but I mean, racists probably don't even see that they're racist, honestly. So if you grow up and that's the normal for you, I mean, do you really see yourself being the one on the outside of the circle? Like,
Yeah.
So it kind of sucks for those kids who are raised in that type of environment.
Yeah.
But that's another topic for another day.
I agree. I was about to go in right now.
Yeah, no, don't.
Stop. It's funny.
But
Yeah,
I think
that's all good. That's all really good points too.
Yeah, I think you guys have great points. And like I said, all 3 of us are in different phases of our relationships. Yeah, stages. So obviously, like, we all continue to grow and learn things through experience. So some good, some bad. Obviously, like, I've had some, bumps in the road, but you learn from them and you move on.
Do you feel like you're still doing a lot of learning, or do you feel like you pretty much mastered the situation?
As far as
like where you're at, like in 10 years, are you going to still feel like you're in the same spot in terms of knowledge, or do you feel like you're still going to learn more?
I think as far as like my marriage goes, like, obviously I think I know my wife like the back of my hand. Like I know the mood she's in without her having to say anything. Just by looking at her,
Mm.
I know like what she's thinking. I can read her mind. So, I mean, as far as marriage goes, obviously you have to continue to keep the spark alive and do things like that. Which I mean, her and I have our own little things, but like as a father, like definitely that relationship with my child, like that will be a learning experience basically for the rest of my life. With all my kids, when I have more kids, I mean, no two kids are going to be the same. Like my next kid might be, you know, totally different than how this one was. So, you know, they'll throw me a curveball. But as far as my marriage goes, like I would think that in 10 years, I have it nailed down, and it's, I'm not going to say it's like the same every day, but, you know, for the most part, you know, my wife and I have goals that we want to accomplish in life. And once we hit those goals, we'll make new goals together and we'll work towards those goals. And that itself right there will keep, you know, the relationship moving forward.
Well said.
Yeah. There's nothing awkward about that.
Yeah.
don't know.
Right. That's funny. Good stuff. Good stuff. I mean, yeah, I think that about wraps it up for today. Some good sports talk, some good relationship talk. We're just like a sports relationship podcast.
a little too sportsy, or
a little too
Today
sportsy.
today got a little good. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, well, unless you guys have any other closing remarks, I think that'll be it for this one.
kiss your mic, Steven.
Peace.
He's like,
I'm
I'm
sorry.
good.
I only kiss my son and my wife. So.
That's
And my
like
mother.
That's like a Drake lyric. Alrighty. Awkward.
Peace.